Up next, I'll be joined by a congressman who sponsored legislation to limit the president's powers when it comes to Iran before the strike even happened. I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Khanna from California, serves on the Armed Services Committee. Congressman Khanna, always enjoy having you, sir. I want to start with Iran here. Before the strike, you sponsored this amendment. It was mentioned earlier in the broadcast by Representative Moulton. You sponsored this amendment with a Republican congressman, Matt Gaetz, to stop the president from using federal dollars for military action against Iran without approval. In the simplest of terms, what would that have done?
Craig, it would have prevented this attack. I appreciate you bringing it up, and Representative Moulton was very helpful. We had 27 Republicans who voted for it. A majority of the House passed it. A majority of support was there in the Senate, and the Pentagon fought tooth and nail to remove this provision, and now we know why. They were obviously planning something, and they wanted to be able to strike Iran. I believe we should never have authorized the National Defense Authorization without this amendment restricting Iran's action.
A quick check of the Armed Services Committee website before the broadcast here did not show any hearings that were scheduled on the situation with Iran. Why is that?
Well, there should have been hearings, but what the Armed Services Committee did is produce this amendment, and everyone thought this amendment would be part of the final defense authorization. The amendment made it very clear that there could not be any offensive strike against Iran or Iranian officials, and the limited exception it had for self-defense, the facts here don't rise to that, because there was no planned attack within days that would justify self-defense. So what the outrage was is why this was stripped out of the National Defense Authorization. Congress, frankly, gave a blank check to the Pentagon.
Earlier this hour, another guest, Kurt Bardella, he laid out his argument for why why the House should subpoena John Bolton now that he says he's open to testifying in the Senate. What are the chances that the House would even consider doing that?
Craig, I completely agree with that. Now that John Bolton has said that he's open to testifying in the Senate, there's no argument for why he shouldn't testify from the House, and it would help counter Rubio's argument that, oh, we can't consider Senate testimony if the House doesn't consider it. We ought to do it, and we ought to get Bolton in here, frankly, this week or next week, and let the country hear what he has to say.
So there is talk on the Hill there with your colleagues of doing that.
There is, and I think Bolton now is not going to have an excuse to avoid that testimony, but it is something that's being discussed among colleagues.
Congressman Khanna of California, there for us on the Hill. Congressman Khanna, thanks for your time, sir.